You're a global entrepreneur and investor, and you're asking yourself, where should I incorporate my global, international, multi-jurisdictional business? And today, I'm going to help answer that question. I'm going to show you that the United States of America can actually be the world's #1 jurisdiction for international offshore incorporation. Hello there. My name is Javier Correa. I'm the tax director here at the Rothbard Group, and I'm also a licensed enrolled agent, fully admitted to practice before the Internal Revenue Service in the United States of America. So let's dive right into it. In today's world, in 2026, it is no longer easy to simply navigate the international tax space. It's not the 1980s anymore. The Wolf of Wall Street is no more. Gordon Gekko, Blue Horseshoe loves Anacott Steel. All that is gone. It's in the movies. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to do business internationally, you need to be mindful of substance over form. You need good image, you need good banking, you need a company that will allow you to operate around global markets without friction or with minimal friction, and you need a company that inspires confidence and a company that inspires trust among your clients and a company that, again, allows you to scale your business up, that allows you to grow your business to infinity and beyond, as Buzz Lightyear would say, right? So when we talk about these things and when we take everything into consideration, most of the world's traditional offshore jurisdictions are simply not as strong as they used to be. For example, I hear a lot of people talking about British Virgin Island companies, particularly YouTubers that are not licensed and that are talking about this from a very simple perspective of simply BVI has no tax. And so I hear people talking about BVI companies, about Cook Islands Trust, about Nevis entities, about weird islands in the South Pacific. And while I will not say that there is no situation where these entities might not have some limited use, overall, if you're just planning on running your operations through one of those entities, it's going to be really difficult to actually push it forward. Let's take a look, for example, at BVI, British Virgin Islands, one of the most common traditional offshore jurisdictions. Well, what's the reality of BVI that is shared by the vast majority of small Caribbean island jurisdictions and island in the South Pacific? You've got a small island territory that essentially has more corporations than it does people. It is essentially a very beautiful island with very beautiful beaches. And again, it's a very nice place to visit as a tourist. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a real robust real economy. Other than the tax benefits of just having a headline 0% tax, BVI doesn't really offer much for the vast majority of businesses. And in today's substance over form world, you do need a strategy that is business compliant first, business logical first, and then if you get tax advantages along the way, that's fantastic. But you can't just focus everything on tax. You have to focus everything on being logical from a business perspective and on it being defensible from a substance over form perspective. And unfortunately, for the vast majority of businesses, a small island jurisdiction like the British Virgin Islands is just not going to cut it anymore. That's why here at the Rothbard Group, we designed bespoke strategic business development plans that, of course, look into all the tax advantages you can have, but also take into consideration initially the business strategy you want to develop, what goals you have. How do you want to enter the US markets? All of this is very important to us. So we're business first, and then any tax advantage we can get around that, we'll be more than happy to point you towards those. But ideally, we're going to build a structure that is defensible in the 21st century from a business perspective and that is also tax efficient as a consequence of genuine business operations. We're not just going to the BVI or Cook Islands just because the headline rate is 0% tax. That is something very important that I have to clarify here. So, having said all of this, why do US LLCs really stand out as really the #1 choice for international business people, for people running global businesses in the 21st century? Well, #1, the United States of America is not blacklisted by any other major market in the world. And the reality is that that is the case because the United States is the world's largest economy. The United States controls the dollar. The United States is at the heart and at the epicenter of the world economy, of global trade, of global finances. And that means that the US runs the show. So they're not going to blacklist themselves, essentially. So #1, unlike smaller jurisdictions, particularly small Caribbean island jurisdictions and islands in the South Pacific, you're not going to have an issue with the US being blacklisted. That's #1. #2, let's look at banking access. When you have an entity formed in Cayman Islands or BVI or Bahamas or Nevis or maybe some island in the South Pacific like the aforementioned Cook Islands, Trust me, banking is going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. You're going to be able to access maybe some tier B banks at best. Those banks don't have direct access to the US Federal Reserve. They have to go through correspondent banks. You have to go through a series of committees. So while banking is not impossible, you've definitely made it a lot more difficult for you if you're operating from a jurisdiction whose only clear benefit is the 0% headline tax rate and nothing else. Number 3. If you take a look at the United States from a payment processing perspective, not just access to an actual bank account, there is also a clear advantage. US payment processing is not only set up faster, but it is also at lower fees than most offshore payment processing systems. So while you can have technically a BVI company that processes credit cards, it's going to be more difficult to set it up as well as more expensive. And in fact, now that I touch upon this point, I will also mention that if you have a BVI, Cook Islands, or Nevis company, you're going to spend potentially months trying to open a bank account if you can open a bank account at all. Whereas with a US LLC, provided that you're able to travel to the United States, in the vast majority of cases, you can get a bank account in a matter of 30 minutes, as long as you have the proper documentation, as long as you say the right things, and as long as you can present your case in an appropriate manner to a top tier US bank, which is what we help our clients do when we set up US structures for them that are fully tax compliant. Number 4, let's talk about the image. Not only should you worry about your image with banks, but you should worry about your image globally. If you have a company that is situated in a global finance and business hub like the United States of America, the fact of the matter is that you're going to show and have a much stronger image than if you present yourself as a company that is in a small Caribbean island. That's just how the world works. Not only will banks accept you more easily, but also customers. You're going to have much more credibility. Now, the other interesting thing here is US LLCs can be tax neutral. So one of the things that many people will tell me is, well, Javier, I understand you're a US tax professional. I understand the Rothbard group works with foreign entrepreneurs and investors that want to access the United States of America, but the US is a high tax country. You can't really have a tax neutral or tax efficient entity in the United States of America, unlike, let's say, BVI or Bahamas. But think again, that would be completely incorrect as a statement. If you are a foreign entrepreneur or investor, meaning you are a non-resident alien, i.e. you are not a US citizen, you do not have a green card, and you do not spend enough days in the United States to trigger the substantial presence test, you are only taxed in the United States on US source income. Foreign source income is not subject to US taxation because you are not a US person for tax purposes. And the beauty of the US is that we can structure a company, a limited liability company, to be either a single member limited liability company, which is disregarded for US federal tax purposes, or we can structure a multi-member LLC, which is taxed as a partnership. And in either case, those entities will allow the income they earn to flow down to their members and owners. And as long as those entities are producing foreign source income, that foreign source income is going to flow down to the non-resident alien owners, to the foreign entrepreneur owners, and not trigger any US tax, even though you're accessing US banks, US payment processing, US clients, you have a US image, you have a US website, a US mailing address, and everything about you is US, you still have zero US tax liability. So you get all the benefits that come with the United States of America, but you don't get any of the downside that comes with the United States of America, mainly taxation. So here at the Rothbard Group, we truly thrive in developing business development plans for foreign entrepreneurs and investors who want to access the US market and who want to do it in an efficient, compliant, and operational optimal way by creating tax structures and business structures in the United States that are both legal and compliant, as well as tax efficient and or tax neutral in the vast majority of cases. Now, in addition to this, US LLCs also benefit from the fact that US courts are also among some of the most developed in the entire world, meaning that you also get that legal credibility that comes with operating in a top tier jurisdiction that is the United States of America. Now, having said all of this, does this really mean that a Caribbean entity or a traditional offshore entity has no use whatsoever in international planning? No, that's not totally what I'm saying or exactly what I'm saying. There could be some limited use cases where that does happen. But even when that does happen, we would encourage you here at the Rothbard Group to look for quote unquote traditional offshore jurisdictions that really have tax advantage, but that also have real business substance. And that is why we've chosen to complement the vast majority of our US structures with Panamanian structures. Because even though Panama can be perceived as a traditional offshore jurisdiction, Panama is a developing country. It is a country with millions of people living in it. It has the Panama Canal. It is a genuine business and logistics hub. It has a very interesting banking scene. And there are real advantages at having a Panamanian entity that are independent of tax. The tax advantages that come with it are fantastic. But the fact of the matter is Panama, just like the US, brings real value to the table, not just the tax advantages. The last thing I'll mention is that also economic substance requirements are often overlooked by advisors who push clients towards these offshore jurisdictions like, for example, the British Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, or the Cayman Islands. Now, the fact of the matter is these jurisdictions have been forced into implementing these economic substance requirement rules, which essentially say that in the vast majority of cases, you're going to have to create some kind of artificial economic substance in the country, either by outsourcing it, having some kind of office, outsourcing some of the work. But ultimately, what OECD guidelines have forced these jurisdictions to do is to bring these companies home and say, hey, if you want to operate here and you want to operate taking advantage of our tax-free 0% headline tax, you're going to have to prove that the income generating activities and the management of these entities actually takes place in our territories. We're not going to allow you to simply incorporate in our territories, take advantage of the tax benefits, and simply not have any kind of substance in our territories. Because again, folks, remember, we're in 2026, not 1980. Substance matters a lot more than form. Having a BVI company, having a Cayman Islands company is useless if you don't have real substance. Now, the difference is because the United States of America and the Republic of Panama, for example, are seen as real world economies, meaning that, again, there are real advantages to being in these economies other than simple tax advantages. There are no formal economic substance requirements. So while, for example, a BVI company might require you to pay additional fees, even though you're not paying taxes, you have to pay additional fees to meet those economic substance requirements as you do in Cayman Islands. In the United States of America, for example, you do not have to meet any kind of economic substance requirements formally in order for your business to operate, meaning that you can be a non-resident alien manager, you can have non-resident employees, you can have foreign branches, you can have everything in terms of operations outside of the United States, and you will not have to essentially divert any portion of your capital to create artificial economic substance in the USA, which also creates a meaningful advantage. So, having said this and taking into consideration all the variables, as a foreign entrepreneur or investor running a global business operation, you should ask yourself, do you want a standard small island company that comes with many more headaches than it does solutions? Or do you want a top tier, elite level company that brings you prestige, precision, and access to the world's largest economy while preserving complete tax neutrality and efficiency? If the answer is the latter, we are ready to assist, and we look forward to speaking with you. Rothbardgroup.com. We'd love to have you as a client.